Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, on behalf of your Denver-based podcast crew, we appreciate you joining us for the Friendly Vibes.
Coming to you live from TSS Universidad. We're here to talk tariffs today, folks. It's an intellectual conversation, and I'm joined by two Conors to bring me up to the Conor level of things. To my left, someone who is 4 years below me in high school debate, Conor Farrell. And to his left, a returning guest. Now, fourth time?
Five.
The 5 time?
I don't know.
He doesn't even know. He's been here. He's back. Yeah. Conor Moore.
Yes, sir.
He's been more entrenched in the academic system than ever, right?
Yeah. Brainwashed, bro. Yeah. Completely brainwashed.
They're getting. It's like Severance, right?
Yeah.
You watch that and you're like,
yeah,
it seems normal. This is like every.
It reminds me of going to school.
When do they go to class in this?
So are you a liberal now?
Whoa, that's a big intro right there.
Yeah, that is a good way to go, right?
Yeah.
You on this podcast even have arced. You've talked about your arc towards liberalism.
I have. I would say
the reanalysis of your political compass in undergraduate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Big time.
Oh, yeah.
Big realignment. I would say. I mean, I'm a registered independent. Always have been. Probably always will. You know, at least for right now. But
until Pfizer writes you big enough of a check.
No. I'd like to think I wouldn't be a sellout, but you never know.
So did Bernie, but keep going. Everybody does, dude.
Yeah. I mean, the system itself is set up to be that.
Listen, man, I like to believe I'm not a sellout. Some of those Masonic temples are pretty neat on the inside.
Hey, man.
And you know what? Not everybody gets to go inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll take a tour if it has to come to it.
My uncle's a master mason.
There you go. See?
Dude.
Damn.
Yeah. He says it's just a bunch of old guys like sitting around like doing jack. Nah.
They're told to be running the world, right?
Yeah,
apparently.
100%. 100%.
I will say this, though. After what has been happening in 2.0 Trump, and especially watching like Republicans and how they've just kind of kneeled down and kissed the ring, I won't be probably ever voting Republican ever again. Like definitively. Like,
Trump term 2, electric boogaloo.
They've just he's just hijacked, in my opinion, like even what our foundational beliefs and like the conservative movement of like.
In what ways? Give me some examples.
Think about this, right? Like all of these
because I would like to think that the Republican Party became captured under a uniparty state over the last 25 years, and that both parties really just became one corporate oligarchy of interests.
Which I wouldn't disagree with. Okay. You know, like there's, especially with like neoliberalism and like from the beginnings of like Reagan, where he's like, you know, let's cut taxes, increase defense spending, and entangle this world in hyper globalization. Like, there has always been within both parties like the entrenchment of like the 1% and like them getting tax cuts constantly, and like
both parties love to take advantage of the small guy. It's just the package in which they brand how they're taking advantage of who they're taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And I think throughout history it's always changed, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The branding of how you're leveraging the scales of power, maybe, or whatever.
Which is like fundamentally wrong, right? Like we can all agree with that.
Sure. Totally.
Unless you're like in that 1% tier, which I'm nowhere near there. But like the thing I'm getting at is like now it's so blatant and out in the open with what they're doing. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. Like they're literally, my perception of what was happening in like January and February, and like talking about it in my like strategic intelligence class. We were like, well, I made the argument, basically what all of the attorneys around Trump were doing is let's throw a bunch of shit at the wall, meaning executive orders, flood the system, overwhelm the system, and see what we get away with, see what sticks. And that's going to be like an expansion of like unitary, like executive theory beyond imagine. And Bush started it.
Yes, I was going to say, let's go back to who really started.
Yes,
but it isn't Bush that started it.
I denounce
George
Bush
W. Bush.
Obama
started it. Bush didn't start it. Obama started it. Bush had plenty of war stuff to do whatever the fuck kind of abusive things he wanted to do. He didn't need the executive order articles to start, like, really fucking shit up. Obama's the one that realized that Bush put his toe in the water of what the presidency could be.
He didn't put his toe in the water.
Okay.
He dipped his whole foot. Like, think about this, okay? John Yoon, who's like their top legal counsel after Iraq,
Right.
starts writing memos that are now still cited by presidents about literal torture on, like, black sites and waterboarding. Like, that degrades...
That's the Abu Ghraib stuff, right?
Yeah,
the picture of the nice smiling girl next to the cardboard box. And
that, if you want to start talking about American...
My phone background.
If you want to start talking about the degradation, right, of, like, and I'm not saying America has ever been a moral compass. I think in certain ways it has been. In certain moments in history, like opposing Hitler, right? Like, that's a big moment for the United States stepping on in the correct way.
We were late to the game, though, on that. Like,
we
famously were like, we're not gonna fuck with Hitler.
Let's degrade the Soviet capacity for a few more years before we step in.
Exactly.
And help.
We're really opportunistic. We're really good at seeing where we only capitalize on opportunities, whether it's for power, for money, for resources, right? We step in when we have to because they killed a bunch of Americans or, you know.
Yeah. Now, here's what I've been saying to people, though. Okay. I fully, like, acknowledge, and, like, this is what, like, why I'm, like, enthralled with academia, is because it's so hypocritical of, like, everything and everyone, and, like, the perspectives you'll hear in, like, an international security class. And I can't speak for the classes you took at Corbell, but, like, some of the things you hear in there when people are saying, no, it's like a liberal hierarchy or like brainwashing. No, like, these perspectives you hear are like, whoa, did this kid really just say that in front of the whole class? Like, it is very challenging thoughts. But what I'm getting at is, like, the America, right, like, has done terrible, atrocious things. Like, a lot of Noam Chomsky's writings on on American history are, like, they're hard to argue with, right? But
I don't know, scoreboard, but
yeah,
it's a pretty great argument.
Yeah,
sore loser. Look at the scoreboard. It seems like we're up.
Yeah, but, like, he's so critical of the United States throughout all of history, and what I'm getting at is that, like, it's almost like still two evils, almost, or like two bads, or like whatever you want to characterize it as. But I would prefer to live in, like, a world
where at least they say the nice things.
Well, yeah.
At least they pretend that everyone's happy ideals and doing good, and
at least attempting, at least talking about them, because that's a powerful thing, though. And number two,
dude, I'd rather have someone just talk about what they are and be evil than someone tell me how good they are and then are just, like, abusing kids and all this stuff. Like, I'd rather have.
But I'm talking international system of like. You still denounce, like, genocides happening. Okay. But then number two...
Gotcha.
All right. Of course, we can get so nuanced with these things.
Sure.
But number two, I want to live in a world where at least I still think, and of course I'm biased with my demographic, that I have legal recourse. And I'm not just thrown out of the country because I said something that is now perceived as, like, anti the administration.
Oh,
like,
that's not the party that I'm surprised that you're afraid of. It seems like both of the parties are falling real in love with, hey, your speech is against mine. Yeah. Here's a cage for you, friend.
Yeah.
Isn't that scary? I'm scared of that.
Which I'm just curious to, not to take in another path, but, like, we should talk about eventually Gavin Newsom's new podcast. I'm curious.
What do you think?
He's such a clown.
Really?
He's such a platforming, like, you know, who you have, Charlie Kirk and then Steve Bannon back to back. Like, that's like, he's speed running, like, the worst people on earth, you know? And he's like, oh, look, I'm having dialogue with, like, someone who thinks that Trump should have a third term. Look how tolerant I am. I'm like, what are you talking about? So Kilmar Abrego Garcia, right? Mm-hmm. Newsom said that he came out and he was talking about the Kilmar case and all the media attention that's been on that specific case. And he's saying, you know, it's a distraction. What are we doing getting caught up in this? And I think that's completely wrong. Not from, like, I understand an argument you can make and that there's 199 other people on the plane that went to El Salvador. Why are we focusing only on the Kilmore? I think we focus on Kilmore as like an example of what happens to all of these people. And sure, maybe that I doubt that they actually are picking up anyone who's a criminal at this point based on the evidence we've seen. Maybe one or two, if they got lucky. But like, you guys saw the photo that
I think they're getting some criminals. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get some criminals. And whether those criminal offenses rise to instant deportation level, I think is certainly up for debate.
Yeah. Right. Like, regardless if they're criminals being sent, they deserve due process and how they're being sent. Sure.
Whether they've had violent crimes in this country or not, they still deserve a day in court.
And even if they're not an American, this is a very important point to make. Because some people, I think, don't understand this, and like it's actually concerning.
Which is why they wanted to import all these people, because then they get the rights of the same American citizens. Once they get the foot on soil, you can't treat them different. No, I know. I'm just fucking around. I'm fucking with Connor.
But it's still different. That draws back to like the point I was making. There's still hopefully that recourse for you. Right? Yeah. Like, that is the difference between what we're now facing in the international system of, like, autocracies taking, on the rise with Russia and China. And we're in a really, really unstable time where, like, we're now completely going back on all these things that we've tried to build and tried to live up to, right? Mm. And we most certainly haven't on many cases. But it's like concerning because now we're going back into like, if you look at the long arc of like human history, it's a bunch of autocrats or thugs with guns or weapons, throughout all time, except for this moment where like we tried to like entangle the world economically, right? We tried to bolster morals. Now, I'm not saying
while installing and moving through dictatorships the way we wanted, while abusing people that and classes, and resources and completely which while we committed genocide off the record,
which I do not like shy away from that.
Sure.
I don't. I'm just saying, like, if you look at statistically, right? They call this like the long peace from like John Lewis Gaddis. Now, of course, that's up to debate for who has that peace, whatever. But statistically, you see after World War II, this massive decline to like very relatively low levels, right? There's still genocides happening, terrible things happening to like, demographics and people, especially like in Africa or Southeast Asia, that like white Americans predominantly, we don't give the day of light to. But if you're talking statistically, I guess what I'm ultimately getting at is that like moving more towards this path where we create a conducive environment for autocrats to like literally negate all these like things we've tried to say we should attempt to live up to, we're about to see some big conflict in the world.
Because I kind of agree with your framework. I just think we've already had that as the operating method across the board since we've had the large, deep institutions of the federal regime. So once we've been playing international war games, once we've been playing remove the dictator I like, that's when it's autocracy. It's been like that. And so,
which is such a solid point, and I'm not like this is where I'm like so like torn and angered.
But that's my black nihilist whatever conclusion of like both sides are hopeless, and I have to laugh at both to get through the day. Exactly. So maybe that's not a good productive perspective. This is coming from the guy that thinks going to a place shouldn't equal an outcome, and me being in a place to equal an outcome is silly.
Yeah.
But then how the fuck are we going to get anything done? Which is a great counter argument to that. Yeah. You got to show up and think that meaningful change can happen if you're going to move things forward.
Like in my opinion, there's Timothy Snyder.
Yeah,
he had a really amazing piece on Ukraine and nihilism, and like how Putin is pushing like a nihilistic perspective of like nothing matters, so like whatever.
I can tell you some of the Ukraine war really well for you, and it's just with the example of my across the street neighbor. Over the last year that we've lived here, they had a Ukraine flag. The flag got a little tattered, the hope for the war maybe got a little and now they've got a new flag, a pillow, and a yard sign.
Ooh.
hope is back, baby. Apparently, like the belief behind, they might throw that, every color creed sign out there whenever too. So,
oh yeah, all people are welcome here.
There it is.
Yeah.
Bro, before we dive even deeper,
I want to know what
this whole, I want to know.
This is, yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like Connor should, like, if he wants to, explain like his background and what he's done, because he's done some really phenomenal, like really interesting things.
Yeah, we were talking a little about before he got here.
Yeah.
But you went to school and you thought you were landing an awesome role.
Yeah.
And then it got rug pulled because of this administration.
Yeah. So I got fucked over by this administration. I was gonna go do some really cool work with Native Americans, and then I wasn't. Pretty quickly, I learned that pretty quickly, and it's not just me. It's hundreds of thousands of other people who had decades more experience and lives built in DC that I did. We're finding out that today I was reading that they're going to start cutting the Foreign Service. And I know at least 15 people personally in the Foreign Service. And these are some of like the smartest, hardworking people. I had the pleasure of taking a class with the ambassador Grappo at University of Denver, and he was, really upstanding guy who told me about the strength of the Foreign Service and just a lot of institutions that were really good intentioned people work. So, this kind of forced me to pivot, but my background, to answer that question, I spent some time, I decided to study Arabic for some reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
In high school or college?
In college.
Okay. Where'd you do undergrad?
CSU.
That's CSU. Okay.
Yeah. So
Arabic in Fort Collins.
Yes, sir.
What a useful language.
Yeah, I know, man. Yeah,
it's like 4 restaurants you can actually
2 and then
Look
actually
at me, I'm a very
yeah. And they just cut the program actually. I know, dude. So if you want to go learn, man,
it's too late.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, shout out Mohammed Hirshi. He was my professor. He's a great guy. So I got my bachelor's history in Arabic.
Wow.
And the first reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to be a Islamic theology historian. I think Islamic theology is really cool. It's really deep, really fascinating work. And I realized that historians don't make money. And I'm,
and the ones that do are bought and sold and paid for.
I'm in, I'm a...
Oh, that's you over there, guy.
Yeah, come on.
Give it 30 years.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hi, can I speak to my Pfizer rep, Conor Moore?
Conor Moore, BlackRock, and Palantir Incorporated.
The BlackRock House historian.
Yeah, the BlackRock House historian. Yeah. When BlackRock took over the United States in 2030.
The Great State Street Fire led to Conor Moore. Dude. Sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. Yeah, so I ended up pivoting, and I decided to do the logical thing. So Marshall Fire, if you remember that.
Yes.
We were displaced for about 6 months. Wow. Our house was okay for the most part. It was just tons of smoke damage. So, they put us up in a hotel in Thornton, and I love my parents. 6 months in a hotel with my parents. It's kind of rough.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing the logical thing, and I went to the West Bank to teach English, because why not?
Wow. That is,
Yeah.
The logical thing.
That is, I guess, when you're stuck in a hotel room with your parents for 6 months, the West Bank starts sounding pretty...
like the bells of Jerusalem started ringing, and I could hear them across the Atlantic. And
My gosh.
I was like, it's time for me to go. It's time for me to go. But no, seriously, I always wanted to go to Jerusalem.
That's amazing,
Visit the Holy Land, and I just looked up, literally, I Googled teach English in Palestine, first option, or West Bank, and then I call it Palestine. We'll talk about that later. But I did literally the first Google result, man. I clicked on it, and then I started this journey, which basically now I speak pretty decent Levantine Palestinian dialect. I've been studying that for about 2 years now. I spent 3 months there in 2022, and then 1 month, July 2023. So right before October 7th and all that.
Wow.
And, I have some experience. I have many friends there, many really close friends. A couple people I would call my brother there. I started learning Hebrew as well. So I've, got everything.
You're enemy to be trying to make
sure. I mean, we'll move both ways. But yeah, that's my background. That's how I started this whole international studies thing. And that's kind of my perspective when I, just through anything, history. So actually, pivoting back to the topic at hand, you had an interesting framing of history in that you can frame history in statistics. And I think that's a really positivist way of viewing history. You know, the idea of viewing history that, oh, there's a statistic of, because when you look at how does violence happen, where does violence happen, and why does violence happen, I think it's dumb to say that a rate of violence equals a certain level of societal structure, right?
Yeah.
So let's take 19th century. So the long 19th century, 1819 to 1919 was like this period of relative peace in Europe, right?
Right.
And that structure failed miserably in 1919. You know, it collapsed.
But that was because
1914.
The banking class had installed their leadership in a series of interrelated cousinry.
That's a Marxist for you.
I mean,
you know, no, but the
Holodomor. Look it up. We don't talk about it
exactly.
I'll mention it whenever I get the chance.
No, yeah, dude, it's screwed up, you know, and genuinely so you see
but that's why it happened, right? Because
right.
a family had been kind of loosely installed in relations of power across the European continent.
Oh, you mean in royalty?
Yeah, in royalty, but then through the treaties that those royal classes installed, laid out.
In a sense, I think it was more of the contradictions at that time were falling apart. So, you know, this is just for context.
Yeah.
You know, Connor knows this well, as you might remember from...
Remember, I'm dumb. I would
senior high school debate. I was, Bernie Sanders wearing Communist Manifesto flying guy.
Love it.
And I've not gone down since. You know, I've only become stronger in my belief in socialism and Marxism. And in my opinion, if you look at it from a Marxist point of view, the bourgeoisie and the ruling class traditionally up until that point throughout the 19th century was the aristocracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was
born into power type people. Yeah,
born into power type people, right? But slowly throughout that time, we get free trade, liberalism, these ideas of economic commerce, and we have peace if we have free trade. That
was a big move away from
big step away.
That's a great point,
right? And that shift of the bureaucrats, the bankers, essentially, what was a petite bourgeoisie blossoming into a new, reformed bourgeoisie, took the power of the aristocrats. And I think that if you look at the tides of history, I don't see history as, periods of time. I see it as waves of ideas and movements that kind of happen and flow, right?
I like that. I do a lot of pendulum analysis.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at the waves of history, you'll see that, that was a point where things were actually happening to the extent that war was inevitable. It was going to happen, if not in 1914 and 1920, in my opinion. And I think that, it doesn't matter that what reliance and political stuff, because de facto, the power had already shifted. And the kings and the queens, because that was really the last swan song of, the monarchy which dominated Europe for almost over 1,000 years.
Right.
From 650 until 1914, it was the monarchies. Which is insane to think about. And, when you look at it from a historical perspective...
Talk about no upward mobility.
Yeah,
people nowadays,
seriously.
No upward mobility. Shut up and get to work.
No,
come up with a cool idea, add value to society. There's plenty of upward mobility to go around.
We have it a lot better in some senses, than 1300s for
Every
sure.
senses. There's heating in most houses. There's laws that make habitability.
Man,
it's pretty good.
But counterpoint.
Yep, please. I like the counterpoint.
In medieval societies, they didn't have clean water, so they just drank beer all day.
Oh, that's good. And I could die younger then, and people wouldn't be
32.
So butthurt about wanting to die young.
Yeah, dude.
Such
seriously.
Bullshit.
Yeah, the 26 Club was actually a genuine achievement back then.
Damn, I made it to 27. That's crazy.
Yo, exactly.
Let's go, boys.
Yeah.
Break out the mead.
Yeah, break up a mead. Oh, he's dead. Oh, fuck. Yeah.
Bad mead. We shouldn't have kept it for that long.
Nope. I brew my own mead, by the way. It's good.
No. This camera's good.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I just hit the monitor because I'm a producer today.
You're good. We're back.
Oh, we're so back. Yeah, technical difficulties.
We're so back. We're so back.
We lost a minute of good content there. Who cares?
We've never been gone. But anyways.
Okay, so the waves of history.
Yeah, so anyways, history, is
so that wave was going to come.
It was going to happen. And frankly, I see what's happening now as inevitable, right? The contradictions of corporations you know, like you were talking about, corporations just becoming de facto governments, right?
Right.
Like this whole Amazon town stuff is weird. Dude.
Have you read about how Zuckerberg, before the election, got in real deep with Trump as quick as he could because he wanted to have the federal case settled against him, that they were going to have to pay, like, I think it was like the difference between 50 billion and 50 million, which is huge. Yeah. So, like, that's worth him investing, you know, 300 million in a campaign or whatever he needs to do, type of thing. Yeah, that's pretty fucked
crazy
up.
Yeah, so fucked up. You know what's crazy? Like in like this whole like first term or like 2016 election, the central point was like drain the swamp, and now the man is definitively the swamp.
Yeah,
he is it. You know, no, but going back to like perspectives on like history too.
Yeah,
and I haven't been like too much into like I graduated with a history major and a political science, and I was super into history, wanted to do that, but now I'm just like full blown in like contemporary stuff, you know?
Okay.
Much more like that is what dominates, right?
That book learning, so
that's all man. Yeah. No, but what I'm saying is like, because right now I'm in a foundations course for IR theory.
Yeah.
What's that? International relations.
Yeah. And
interracial studies.
That
theory.
That woke stuff. No, but like
talking to girls in real life.
Yeah. Sorry. We're talking about, you know, like realism to liberalism, to constructivism, which would you say like that historical, what you were saying about like strands and like interactions
in a way
is like very, isn't that constructivist?
In a way, it's, you know, it's like a historical dialectic, you know, if you want to get a Marxist theory, you know, like Marx talks about the historical dialectic, and that's a really big thing he talks about. Yeah. You know, and that's how I see history in a sense, you know, it's kind of like ups and downs and waves of things like that.
For sure. And so what I'm like coming at is like, there are certain things that theories, there's no normative theory, right? Yeah. There's no theory right now that can explain everything and then prescribe, you know, or like talk about implications correctly. And like, so I'm doing papers on each of these theories each week on the Russo-Ukrainian war.
Okay.
Which is like really interesting because like people right now, you know, like school is a way of creating concepts to think about things, and like a lot of people don't understand that, and like how many differing like ways there are to think about, you know, this conflict. But what I'm getting at is like there are different theories that are better than others in certain respects, right? So like realism with explaining like power dynamics, or like from a very hard, rude,
the right tool like, for the tool,
area.
Right
exactly.
tool for the job.
So like that's what I'm saying is like there's so many different lenses, and like to shine on a prism, and you're gonna get something very important, equally as important as over here. Right? Does that make sense? So like I don't know.
I'd go back to the stats. I'd go back to there's hard data on all of it.
Yeah, which I don't believe.
And like,
I do not believe that though. But I believe like it's so much more complex than just hard sciences and cold raw calculations. Like this is one huge thing, for instance, with realists in the causes of the Ukraine war. They're like, it's NATO expansion. This is pure threat to Russia proper, right? And they like say all these arguments about, well, you know, NATO didn't acknowledge Putin's red lines throughout the past 2 decades, and he had to do it. And when I think about that, it's like, well, right now, why is 1,600 miles of border left unguarded with NATO and Russia right now? Like he's focusing all his troops on Ukraine. That contradicts the whole theory right there. Based on hard, sheer power.
Well, do you think that he'll not, like, pivot to, like, the Baltic states after he knocks out...
Oh, yes, 100%. So this is also where realists, like, get it wrong, right? Like, they're basically arguing, well, like, he's doing this because he had to. He was pushed into the corner. But then again, it's like, well, how do you explain, the 05 color revolutions in Ukraine to the violence instigated in Ukraine in 2014? Like, people don't realize this war was not started in a day. It was started over decades.
Yeah.
It was built up, right?
Yeah.
And then in 2014, you have Crimea, the annexation of Crimea. You also have the invasion of Georgia in 2008 under George W. Bush. Like, these things are long buildups of like Putin chipping away at the
from
facade.
2012 through 2016, the Obama administration was funding both rebel groups in Syria against Turkey's leadership.
In Syria?
In Syria.
Yeah,
FSA.
SDF.
Yeah.
And,
Both sides.
Yeah.
Free
That's
Syrian
how you
Army.
That's how you win a war.
Yeah.
You fund both rebel groups.
To be fair, there are 8 sides in that civil war.
Yeah, fund most of the sides.
Fund most of the sides,
It's like putting your money on half of the roulette board. It's like, yeah, you're probably gonna win.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because the 2 sides that ended up winning were functionally those 2,
Right.
and then they.
Well, it's funny because we gave them the most resources, money, and tactical.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and we kind of play God because we didn't have the most intel
Yeah.
and play the most war games. And we're
Remember
kind
when
of,
sure.
Trump attacked that base
Oh,
in
dude.
Syria in 2018? And you just launched Tomahawk missiles into the fucking mountains of Lebanon?
Dude.
That was insane.
Yeah. See, that's some raw,
That was
unitary
crazy.
executive power right
Yeah.
there, stemming from.
I mean,
Our
the whole
boy Bush.
what is it? Not the JDPOA, but the with a joint resolution of arms. You know what I'm talking about, for Iraq, and how that's just been abused for 25 years now, just
to make money.
Just to make money. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Just for
all right,
profit.
Yeah.
we're going to use the military to literally, in my opinion, the military industrial complex supports Israel because they're wait, this is the best way to test out our new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a guaranteed moneymaker.
Well, here's a story for you. When I was living in Hebron, right? Hebron is a city on the southwest bank, and that's where Abraham, Sarah, Jacob are buried. And center of the city is an Israeli settlement. So basically, imagine if, you built a wall around downtown Denver, and the only people who go in were people born in Denver or something like that. Or
so
from
it's like
Colorado.
Vatican City in Rome.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
basically. And except with much worse. You can't. Yeah, it's really hard to get in. It's not hard to get in.
Sure.
But anyways, it's a settlement. It's illegal. Under international law.
They've just taken this land.
Yeah,
Israel has.
Yeah, so they just popped up. And there was
It's a pop-up. That's a great way to put it.
I know,
American
literally, it's a
terms.
pop-up. There's a whole history going back to 1929. There's a massacre of the Jews there. Well, that's a whole different podcast.
Gotcha.
But when I was in Hebron, I was at one of the checkpoints walking around, and I noticed this giant freaking gun just perched on above the doorway, right, or the cage gate to get in. And I asked my Palestinian friend, I was like, "What is that gun right there?" And he was like, "Oh, that's a remote controlled gun that the Israelis are testing out on us." Which is insane.
Yeah.
Literally, it's like a fucking turret from Apex Legends. Just I'm not even joking.
No, I know. The Israel
it's insane.
Palestine conflict is Palmer Lucky's wet dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
People that like making weapons and money are coming in their pants over this.
Yeah. Oh my god. I mean, they can just test out whatever they want, man.
And then if shit pops off because of the tough stuff they tested out, they get to test out even more stuff on a larger scale.
Dude. And then they get to make money off
Even
of that
more
too.
money to be made.
Which Ukraine is also that
Yeah.
way, except now
100%.
you're talking about we're testing it out on a potentially major power against us,
Yeah.
great power warfare.
Yeah, that's super sick. Yeah, dude. That's
I love how we
awesome.
keep getting up in arms about
That's so cool.
resources, and then we find we trip over the biggest lithium deposit that we've ever fucking found on Earth.
Seen that? It's the cycle. It's all
so the God loves the United States.
Yeah. Holy shit, man.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean,
How many years off? Here's a good question. How many years off are we from discovering that oil is a renewable resource?
Oh god.
Because I do think we are going to discover that. I don't think we fucking understand it well enough. And we keep finding it in places we don't expect and stuff. And I do think that we're going to come down the pike of this stuff that we thought was totally going to used up. It was just alarmism. It always has been alarmism in every front. And it's been a money maker to have this be De Beers and diamonds,
How is it renewable if you need to extract it? like you can't extract sunlight. You know what I mean? Like, so you can burn oil. You can use oil in a renewable way, but you still have to consume oil, right? Or am I wrong?
Yes, renewable in that we wouldn't be able to feasibly use it at a rate that it would not get replaced at naturally.
Like
yes,
fusion
I guess
oil.
is kind of how in my mind I'm kind of visualizing the thought experiment of where we might go with this. Yes.
That's sick.
That's what I would hope, maybe.
That would be awesome, man.
Yeah, like the Earth is its own cold fusion thing that we really are kind of like.
I would literally save our species.
All these pyramid stuff
like,
and the old,
joking.
you get into the conspiracy reading about like why is all these old tech built? How they build these things. Did they have, magic powers? Could they move blocks with their minds? Could they make energy by utilizing the Earth's natural? Is the Earth its own natural, cold fusion thing?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
I think Trump and the administration, have you seen this week? They keep getting as close as they can without explicitly saying that we can teleport stuff.
Yes.
Have you seen this?
Yeah.
This week, they keep as close as they can be to be like, listen, guys, stop worrying about all these fucking limits that you're putting on reality. Because we can send stuff wherever we want, whenever we want, like that.
It's awesome, man.
So I'm kind of across the barrier of well, that aligns with all this crazy action he's taking and all this stuff. Well, if you did have godlike tech like that, why wouldn't you fuck around however the hell you want? Because you can just put stuff wherever, move stuff wherever. Why be worried about Chinese spy balloons or whatever crap? Because doesn't matter. Just boop.
Yeah,
Be right there in an instant.
I mean, I would just say that Trump has said some wild, outlandish stuff that
How about this? The tech that the U.S. Black Ops programs was producing in the 80s that is starting to come out in public disclosures. If that's what we had in the 80s, and now you've got psychopaths, billionaires like Palmer Luckey with money?
Yeah.
Dude, they can teleport stuff.
That's why, whenever, I see, some, rebel, chud on the internet who's like, I'm gonna take down the government with my AR-15.
Sure,
they are going to be killed. I'm like, dude, you're gonna sneeze and then a predator drone is going to literally disintegrate you in front of your family.
Oh yeah,
and you're just never going to be able to survive.
Yeah, we've had guests come on and talk about these new drones that they're making where they explode and they release these shards that just tear through any type of meat in the area.
Nice, man.
And they can target them down to an individual level.
Yeah.
So they can trace this drone, fly it through a building, know right where the person is off their cell phone because they've got Pegasus on it, and then they go boop, you're dead.
Yeah.
You guys have seen the videos from Ukraine of the
God,
grenades getting dropped on people in the
nuts.
trenches. We're talking about a war that's been going on for 3 years. Both sides are exhausted and they're doing the shittiest, easiest methods possible. Imagine what the U.S. government, and we're just waiting for a chance to drone strike our own civilians, dude.
Well, think about too Hamas's top political leader. I think it was a year ago when the drone. Yeah.
Oh, you mean Sinwar?
Yeah. So I don't know the names, but when the drone was flying through and it caught a peak, and they're like, "Wait, is that?" And they go back a drone,
and he throws a rocket at them.
Yeah. He was hiding in there, and then it just goes right in, just boop, done.
Yeah,
killed one of their top political leaders.
Yeah, more like nah. Come on, folks.
Yeesh.
Learn the name so you can make jokes too.
Exactly. Oh, poor yeah.
It's the only reason to read about the news in the world. I would love to retire this joke, but it keeps working. South Korea, did you hear they declared martial law?
I did.
First arts, now law.
Oh,
Says they don't come from Mathers next. Am I right, folks?
Christ.
Chicka, that's an American institution.
Yeah.
Marshall Mathers.
The one thing that's just so frustrating, but it is just life. We don't know anything.
Nothing.
Oh yeah.
I was talking about this yesterday at dinner with some family members who were debating all these things about Ukraine. And
yeah, that's worth it on Easter.
I know.
Christ,
must have been
fucking
awesome
white Americans.
Yeah,
dude.
well, then it's just at the end of the day, right? There's so many different perspectives and whatnot, and then we really just have no clue, right? When we talk about what Putin is thinking right now in the Kremlin, and his economy apparently to a bunch of analysts is going to fall down this year, or by 26, right? And like, but then again, we've been saying all these things about sanctions throughout the whole war kicking in. So he knows something we don't about like funding this, getting it going.
Oh no.
Keep going. But
It's functionally illiterate, this camera.
like there are those who are like, just keep the war going a little bit because it's gonna implode. But then again, it's like, what happens when Russia implodes? How unstable? What type of power vacuum is that going to create, right? But there's just so much, like, you would think that initially, like, a bunch on the right would say, well, once Trump gets in, right? And it's so ironic to hear Trump throughout his whole campaign saying literally 20 times, war is going to be over in 24 hours. And then after that, war is going to be done before I enter office. And then literally a few weeks ago, he's like, well, come on. I was just having a little bit of fun. I was exaggerating it a little bit. Come on. And it's like, yeah, no, dude, like to any actual like critical observer of the conflict, leaders aside, you're not going to have either nation after they both probably have lost over 500,000 people, right?
Yeah.
Potentially. At least the Russians. The Russians for sure have lost over 500,000 people. Young men in the fodder, right? Ukraine has had like genocide committed against their toddlers, right? Like they're not going to give this up in 24 hours, Don. Like, come on, you know? But my point is...
Get rid of both sides. They've lost their privileges. Same with Israel, Palestine. Everybody... Dad needs to pull the car over, and we're going home. Stop fighting in the backseat. We're going the fuck home. We're going home.
But no state solution.
No state solution.
Yeah.
Nobody gets any territory.
No one gets
Yes,
state.
dude, I'm telling you. Nobody gets... No winners. Ukraine, Russia, you stop fighting, or I'm turning this car around.
Yeah. See,
Donnie's just a lunatic that could play that strategy.
Yeah.
I'll nuke everybody unless you stop fucking fighting in the backseat.
But I think people are now like, they're starting to realize the BS.
Oh yeah.
And
dude.
so now it's like countries are coalescing against our own allies are. So it's like
but they don't spend enough on the military.
Theory, but they're about to.
Yo, bro. They're going to have to fucking get a lot of money and spend it for a long time. That's the beauty of this fucked up system we've been running for 30 years, is that we're so far ahead on all this that you really have to have everybody band together and come for us, or you don't have a chance.
We're doing
like not even a slim chance.
Yeah. Like the reason all these countries can do like social spending is because America's like... And that's the reason we have no social spending, is because we're like, you know, fucking paying for everybody. And I don't want to be like a hardcore isolationist. I am an internationalist person, but like other countries, you know, and that's the thing though, is that, you know, we're seeing this push and pull of like in other countries like Germany, right? Germany, their new chancellor, Merz, he's courting with the far right, the AfD, and talking about cutting, you know, like Germany's robust social spending and healthcare, welfare network, because they need to build like new railroads. They need to update and modernize their factories, you know. And the Bundeswehr Germany needs to build their army again. We all know where this is going, you know. But
oh, dude, we're literally in an era where Germany is fully rearming.
Yeah. Oh, and Japan too.
How wild is that?
Yeah,
Japan too.
And
they got
but
Japan too, bro.
Yeah.
See you in 50 years, pal.
So
I've seen this one before.
Yeah.
No, for real though, like the one thing that does worry me is if we can't teleport shit, if this is like just a bunch of talk, we better start building some fucking ships, some naval ships, because China's got a fuck ton of them, and they're really good at building them. I'm
curious even about that, like, so real quick, I 100% agree. Like, when you are spending 850 some billion a year
amounts of money
on defense, right? Now, real quick, the EU is stepping up though. Yeah. Like, and this might be actually Trump's.
The EU's illiterate, dude. They can't even regulate properly. They can't grow their economies. They're shrinking.
What do you mean?
The EU
is one of the strongest economic powers, bro.
Dude, the EU's down bad, and you know it.
I don't know about that, dude. The
EU knows that the EU's down bad, which is why they're doing all this stuff.
Why? Well, yeah, because the threat is right there on their doorstep.
Because they've been...
And because they're pulling away. And
here's what
yes.
happened. The EU is like a college girl who's just hit junior year. And finally, dad's credit card isn't going to pay for everything anymore. So now some of her habits have to change. And you're coming to me like, look at how productive Susan's being. She's got all her shit together. Susan's got on the right track, and give Susan a couple years, she's going to be in a PhD program.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, dude, Susan just can't pay for Coke anymore because daddy doesn't pay for rent.
Dude, okay.
That's what I'm telling you.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I literally in November for my U.S. foreign policy class, I talked about how this was unsustainable. The United States, there were some people in my U.S. foreign policy class, like the perspectives where you're like, whoa, where they were arguing like U.S. primacy should still be like, should persist and go beyond. I was saying I didn't believe that the U.S. could go up to 6 or 7% of our GDP on defense. And I have this one of my friends.
Fucking communist.
Dude, one of my friends,
non-believer over here.
One of my friends who's pretty radical in his like U.S. exceptionalism perspective, and he's like over there, we need to up it. We need to up it to 10%. And I'm like, that we cannot like that.
What do you mean? We issue the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do whatever more money.
But I don't know.
We're basically God, bro.
Okay. But here's the thing, like, it's about when you elect someone like Trump, like, no, that's socially unacceptable for the U.S. government to do. Okay. So I argued in November the same thing you were, where it's like time is running out. Europe has been literally should have started this process before the election of saying we need contingencies for a Trump administration. And now they were like, it literally forced Trump to pull intelligence and funding from Ukraine to make them literally go, we need to meet right now. And now state that we're going to have 800 million or billion potentially soon or within 10 years, at least within 10 years spent on defense. Now that means they will be a peer-to-peer competitor of the United States if they spend that kind of money.
If they spend that much in a decade, they'll spend what we spend in a year.
Well, they'll get up to it annually.
Oh, okay.
So, like, here's what I'm saying. Like, they realize now, yes, we have to slash social programs.
How many countries
it's
are in
no
the
longer
EU?
possible.
28.
Okay. 28, they're going to come up to us in 10 years. Like I said, I'll tip my cap to you. You want to play in the big leagues. AAA team wants to come up to the big leagues.
Think about Germany. Like they're pushing. They're literally already aiming for 500 billion.
Bro, I don't worry about
spending.
shit, dude. So, they can meet the West Virginia coal miners like at the fucking front lines, and those boys will take them out.
I don't know about that, dude.
Okay, there's this hidden part of America that comes out when it's needed, and you know that this is the thing that happens. It's happened post 9/11.
Yeah,
the first Trump election in a lot of ways. When Barack was elected the first time, like the people. If we actually had to come together, man, think about how many young men in America have just exited working. From 25 to 45, there's like 10 to 13% of young men that are just, they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They're meaningless, purposeless souls. Give them people to kill or people to fight, and these people, it's a great argument. But it's a true argument.
Yes.
I'm not bringing the ethics aside. This is just the fact.
It is a pragmatic, this is what we can do.
Murder squad.
Dude. Send them to the Indo-Pacific now.
Death squad of Joe Rogan listeners, man.
I'm just saying, dude, there's a reason my grandpa enlisted at 17 when the World War II was over. Like it was done. Like you dropped the bomb the week he was getting sent out.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah, right.
Well, so like,
but like there's a reason, because that's what America is in, we have that in us. So I don't know if money, I don't know if you can spend your way out of sitting in cafes, smoking cigarettes and drinking espressos for 100 years. I truly don't think you can fucking do that.
We're gonna find out though. Okay. So, and here's the other thing. When I was arguing in that paper in November, I was like, there is this sympathetic argument of like a nugget of truth of what Trump has been saying about Europe, right? Mm-hmm. Completely disagree with the way he's approached it, but maybe it's what he had to do, right? And that truth is that like we can no longer focus on Europe. And contrary to what you believe, I don't think that in the climate, we can sustain both theaters unless a war actually occurred encompassing everything.
Have you seen
2 theaters? Okay.
Have you seen the
they have to pivot. Europe has to spend on Europe, and then they pivot to the
But what are they going to be able to
Indo-Pacific.
spend? They don't make money. They don't they've regulated out all their industries. If you look at any infographics of United States, and yes, this is part of the corporate oligarchy that controls all of our interests, but the money and scale of value we produce on a market level versus European, they don't have any big companies. Not even, and their big companies aren't even close to what our big companies are.
But to counter that, though, I would argue that at least under the current system of tariffs, which I assume is going to at least exist in some form,
sure,
right? We're fucking ourselves over in that regard, right? And I think because our market relies so heavily on the supply chain. That is how American political economic power has been spread, is through the supply chain. Is company buys X, and then they buy Z, and so look at chip manufacturing in Taiwan, for example, and how that pulled from literally every freaking country in Southeast Asia, right, which were all beholden to us de facto. Literally every single country in Southeast Asia was, and that's insane considering that they're right next to China, and obviously Vietnam and China, they've had their 300-year beef, but I know, I mean, I think that
I guess what I'm thinking of, even if politicians in rooms think they have a better arc, they have to still be bound to the realities of what they can produce, and those people in Europe have been sitting on their hands for 50 years, unfortunately.
Which I agree.
It's real tough to take your hands out from under your ass and put out your cigarette and finish the espresso and get on the battlefield of the modern international market.
100%.
And we have companies where we create fucking Hawk Tua coin. We create billions of fake value out of nothing. So
I will say, to Conor's point, though, I think the one greatest thing that Trump has done for Europe is that he is literally, he turned everyone in Europe from remember 10 years ago, Euroscepticism, and everyone was man, I remember we'd have these debates in speech and debate at Monarch, all right guys, is Europe in good, Euroscepticism good? Now literally Poland is all in on Europe, and Russia helped with that for sure, but Poland used to be everyone was talking about Pole exit, Poland's gone, Britain left, and it helped that Britain left, and again they crashed, because a country was ran by dumbasses.
Poland is a great story in capitalism and deregulation, and homogeneous populations.
Well,
no,
I don't know. I'm not laughing at that.
Academia points to these Nordic countries and Japan and all these homogeneous beacons of ethical, equality, and it's they all look the same, talk the same, think the same. It's pretty easy when it's like that.
Yeah. Well, no, this is such a strong point.
Totally.
Because people have been even during, Brexit and all the way, like you were saying, and I guess that was high school for all of us around that time. But
so is Britain not in the EU now?
No, they're out,
they're not.
bro.
So are they gonna contribute to this new, defense?
Oh yeah. So it seems
it's a thing. So they're talking about negotiating this trade treaty, Starmer is, which is basically de facto
the EU.
The EU.
Okay, that's kind of where I was wondering.
Which is it's so and he's we're not going back. We're not going back. It's motherfucker, you're going back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's phenomenal point because okay, even consider I took a class in undergrad just about the EU, the history and where it's at now. And we're talking about countries like Hungary or is it Serbia they're not.
Serbia's pretty Eurosceptic.
Yes.
It's Hungary and Serbia are the ones who are
those are the ones challenging immigration policy and things like that. And they're definitely leaning very far right? Yeah. Orban,
big time.
I mean, I lived there for a year, but that country is as a full blown democratic backslide, right? He controls it. But anyways, to this point is the EU was never ever intended to ever deal with security, right? It was a supranational organization solely to bound together economic capability so that after World War II through
international fairy dust, bro. It was a bunch of fucking San Franciscoites up their own butts thinking they're the best, most idealistic people that have ever walked the planet and that they can all get along better than anyone else in the human's history has ever done. And they're so far up there. That's what it is.
Well, maybe, but like
and I wish I had that kind of belief in people.
No,
I wish I could fucking be like that.
Over its history, starting with the economic coal and steel community, this has been a slow process of developing norms,
right? Of
developing things where like we need to hand over some power to this entity so we don't fucking kill each other. Right? Or at least so we can act as a power against another one. And so
against
what
a
you
competent
have,
power, you mean us?
What?
Against a competent power, you mean us?
No, not against the US. So like what in neoliberalism, right? One of the top, and I'm Eikenberry. I think John Eikenberry.
Yeah.
He talks about structural neoliberalism. And one of the big things in it is that we agree on like this security co-binding where we can all temper one another. Now, of course, there's so many debates about this, but just for the idea. Like,
so what's different from this framework than the World War I framework? Oh, thank you. What's different from this framework than the World War I framework?
Well, I don't know much about the World War I.
But you know, I mean, in terms of you're basically describing, you know, a step away from mutually assured destruction, where like we can't fight because it's in our best interest not to fight.
At least amongst democratic states, which they're
democratic peace theory.
Yeah, which stupid, it is, and I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah,
but like the larger idea of like, I forget the term he used, but like partial hegemony, like all this stuff where you buy into the U.S. taking that security nature around the world, right? Like opening trade routes, yes, and like hopefully relying on these things. But what I'm getting at is like the EU over time has been building up and like handing more power away to a stronger entity to throw weight around, which is true. And when people say like the EU doesn't have, or like isn't, to your point, I don't know as much as you do about economics.
I'm sure you do.
No,
I'm sure you do.
No, but I'm just saying like the like they have 500 million people, right? The EU together. They are a force. If you want to talk just demographics, they're a force. Like the Russia couldn't even handle them. They're like 1/16 the population or something crazy like that. But over time, like now what we've seen with Ukraine, getting back to Conor's point about like what this is actually proving is like they're like binding together and they're like, we've got to do this. And like they're now going into defense, which was never agreed upon. Like earlier in the phases, it would have been unacceptable to hand away your national interests on foreign policy to the EU, and now they're doing that.
Yeah, go to the 90s and like the Rome conference and be like, hey guys, how about security guarantees? Yeah. They would have like all like shot each other just immediately.
Yeah.
Like they would have just walked out of the room.
Exactly. You know? And now they're doing that. Yeah. And Ukraine sparked that.
Yeah.
So they were sitting in the cuck chair as bigger and bigger bulls kept fucking their bitch. And then it's got to the point that they've stood up from the cuck chair and said, damn it, I want to sit on the bed.
Yep.
Which also
to feel like I'm in power.
This is one other thing too. The EU has spent more on Ukraine in actual euro or dollar amount than the United States. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They have.
Last I checked.
Yeah.
And someone told me literally yesterday when we were talking about this, they're like, no one's come close to the US. No. If you're talking actual dollar amount, the EU has provided more than the United States. Now, of course, we're not talking down to the nitty gritty of like, you know, advanced weapons systems and things like that, and the technology we can give to them, right?
You know, like artillery shells.
Those don't hit the books?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying in sheer spending.
Well, all they need is money to
economic
go to the nightclubs.
and military.
In Kyiv, if you give them enough money, that everybody can go out to the nightclubs in Kyiv, the war will end.
Yeah.
You've been to nightclubs in Kyiv?
I bet they look popping from the videos I see.
I would love to go to a nightclub in Kyiv. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
Especially now, right?
Yeah.
The ratios must be off the chain.
Oh my.
Not a sausage party, am I right?
Hey, man. Shout out Putin for that one.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Yeah. No shout out to Putin.
Vladimir getting the ratio right.
That's what he's talking about. He's talking about bringing back the West.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, what?
The back the West. Putin is.
Western ship wives.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's his whole thing is like, we have to restore Western ideology by killing all the Nazis and the gay people and something like that. I don't know. Watch his interview with Tucker Carlson.
Oh, yeah.
It's
dude.
so funny. He's like, all right. Tucker Carlson's like, so why did you start this war? And
He's like, let me give you 300 years.
Literally, it's like, well, in 600, when they founded Kiev and Rus. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Literally.
Sick. Dude.
Well, that's where,
that's the kind of, hyper understanding of, actual culture that, I'm talking about when I talk about the West Virginia guy.
Yeah.
Where, they're just waiting for, a real reason to, defend the Stars and Stripes type of thing.
That's how, constructivists will, dive into, the causes.
What do you mean?
They'll go historical, identity, deep, perspectives.
I think that, it does play a role, but, Putin exaggerates it to,
100%.
and especially with the Ukraine stuff, it's so nuanced. Actually, I know someone who's, a Ukrainian, and he supports Ukraine. He's born in Kherson, which is currently occupied, and he's a refugee in the United States from, got displaced from everything. And, his native language was Russian. He grew up speaking Russian. His grandmother spoke Russian. His dad spoke Russian. And he was telling me, he was like, actually, I've lost friends over, the fact that I won't switch to Ukrainian. But I speak Russian growing up,
Yeah.
And I know, it's again, it's not black and white, especially, Israel, Palestine. That's actually pretty black and white. Ukraine, is there's a little bit more nuance to it in terms of, the cultural heritage, history, da-da-da-da-da. But at the end of the day, one country illegally invaded another and then killed a lot of people.
Russia, a larger country, invaded Ukraine, a smaller country.
There we go.
That's who you wanted elected?
Yeah.
Come on, Connor.
No, hey, man. Listen, the greatest... Are you talking about Kamala? Is that Kamala?
Oh, that's Kamala.
Dude.
You never heard... That's who said that, right?
I don't know.
That was her explanation of the war in Ukraine.
I thought that was...
Russia.
That sounds like a Clinton.
A larger... Yeah, it might as well. She learned from that school.
I mean, dude, they're both, freaking starting pitchers from the shitty president's club.
You know what's wild real quick on this, Kamala? All of the Trump supporters, just honing in and calling them Marxists and communists.
Dude, I wish.
That is so fundamentally, they need to go read the manifesto, right? Or Das Kapital.
Dude, I'd like to see them try.
Yeah.
Man. But
Das Kapital is thick.
Dude,
it's thick. It's what,
Have you
3
read it?
volumes,
It's
right?
Yeah. It's
I've
You
only
only
read
need to read 1
portions.
and 2, but...
Yeah.
3 is really just his whole industrial. It's like Ted Kaczynski's. It's like Marx really went off the deep end.
He's like, this is how you become alienated from labor, and you're like, all right, pal,
that's enough.
Let's move on. I wish Kamala was a Marxist, dude. That would be sick, dude. Having a Marxist Democrat, that would be awesome. I wish everything that the Republicans said about Kamala was true. That would be so cool. Same thing with they make Democrats look so much cooler than they are. They're like, this Marxist is going to give you free health care. She's going to help you through all the times when you're struggling, when you're low, and you're like, that sounds awesome. That sounds great. I like that, and then you actually listen to their policies, and it's today when we dropped a bomb on Yemen, we had the name of every single gay rights organization.
We signed the bomb with the gay rights name.
There's a pride flag on our bombs going towards Yemen today. Oh, they hit a school? That's probably because they're probably Islamic fundamentalist school.
Gas.
Yeah, dude, they're the worst.
Yeah.
The Democrats are so bad. Kamala, her one good policy was not even good policy. The one thing that she was like, guys, this is why you should vote for me. She was like, I'm going to give you tax owners or small business owners a 20% tax rebate.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. You're so like, and then Trump is like, I'm gonna end the war. Like, no shit, fucking Trump won. Are you kidding me?
If Trump ends taxes for people under 150 grand,
imagine,
dude,
that
we don't need to be paying taxes. They don't use that money. The federal government doesn't need taxes to spend. That's a very little secret. The state government does, local governments do. But the federal government does not require taxes to spend. And this is a modern monetary theory. This is a Marxist concept, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
That the federal government doesn't require our tax dollars to spend.
Can you explain to me, though?
Well, when you're the issuancer of the currency and you drive a demand for that currency, you basically become a mafia force around driving that currency into the pockets of everyone in the society.
Yep.
So I'm curious.
Like, let me ask you: if you go to court, can you pay that court fee in anything but USD? No. Then you better get some USD. Can you pay your taxes in anything but USD?
Yeah.
No.
But I'm curious. On the flip side, like, what is, from your like economic background, like, is there legitimately a danger in letting the deficit grow, right? Like the debt grow.
I mean, it's a Ponzi scheme. As long as we keep up the Ponzi scheme like going, as long as we have, if we keep the Ponzi scheme going into indefinite,
we can just keep on raising the debt ceiling for like the rest of our lives.
Here's the other thing: is like, who do we owe?
Are
the
you
debt
sure
to?
about
who do we
that,
owe
though?
the debt to?
Well, to
a lot
tons
of
of
it to
different
us,
people.
To us. A lot of it's to us, right?
Yeah.
More than half of it's
Is
to
it?
ourselves.
All the bonds?
Yes, more than half of it's to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's say the next biggest debtor is China. Let's say they had 49% of the debt.
Yeah.
China comes finally to collect on the debt, right? Well, as long as we've got better tech and bigger guns, we tell them to get the fuck back and not ask them again.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
So there's this real like swarmy thing where like you can run a Ponzi scheme into infinity as long as you also enforce the Ponzi scheme with like tyrannical military force and technology.
Monopoly on violence.
Yeah, if you have a monopoly on the violence and you have a monopoly on the schemes of financial systems and how the players can play them,
right,
it's pretty easy to keep it going.
For sure. So do you think that, like...
I think they need to open Fort Knox to show everybody that they got no fucking gold in there. That's what they need to do.
You're going to go back to gold-backed currency?
That would be so good if we did.
Nixon made the greatest mistake in history.
The oligarchs' power and corporate interest would be severely dampened if we did that.
Immediately cooked.
Yeah, they'd be cooked. State Street, BlackRock, they'd be cooked. That would never happen.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Wait, going back to the gold standard?
Like if we had our money that it wasn't just fake and that the demand for the money wasn't the thing that drive value for the money purely on its own, that it wasn't tied to anything. Yeah, that would be a problem for them because they can't artificially inflate the asset prices market 40% above what it could be. Yeah. Houses in Denver are selling for quite literally they're 45% of just fake value in the market. It's just fake value. And you can look at it, what happened that created the fake value. The government did it.
Yeah.
The government bought these homes and the government used financial tools like State Street and BlackRock to make sure these homes didn't get in default and get into the inventory of the market. Because if inventories go up, prices go down.
Yeah.
And the assets market corrects and State Street doesn't make its money and they don't give their contributions to the people in power and the system, the Ponzi scheme doesn't keep going.
Well, now BlackRock's just buying the houses. They're skipping the middleman.
Bingo.
You know, and that's why we're fucked.
The new thing that BlackRock's doing is they're starting home services companies that are servicing first-time homebuyer homes.
Yeah.
So you own a home that you barely can afford to own off a first-time loan that the government makes possible that you can own a home. So now, Connor, you need to get a new AC on this shittily built new home that's been manufactured in 2025. Built to shit, it's fucked up. You got to get some major repair because the build quality's trash. So you get a repair. Who does that repair? A HVAC company. That HVAC company is secretly owned by BlackRock.
Yeah.
What happens when you can't pay $10,000 out of your pocket? You're a fucking hardworking dude. You don't have that laying around. BlackRock will finance that for you. But if you miss a payment on your finances, now you have a lien on your home. Now BlackRock just takes your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they backdoor their way into your home however the fuck they want it.
Yeah. So what do we do about that, boys? Where are we going from here?
We have to do... Remember when Sprint and AT&T wanted to join?
Oh, right.
And we were like, no, monopoly, we can't do that, monopolistic. dude, we need to break up.
Crack down.
We need to have so much.
What's the
antitrust laws?
Yeah, we need antitrust laws implemented.
When they broke up Rockefeller.
Antitrust.
Standard Oil.
Yeah, Standard Oil and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Return back to it. It's just like Biden said in his farewell address. He mentioned about the oligarchy, right? Or what term did he use?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was oligarchy. He was just saying.
I'll tell you no, Jack. You know, like, shut up.
Yeah,
a fucking dumbass, man.
But he did mention, he was like, we have seen this phase before in American history with Standard Oil and like the big
and I mean, you have all these people that are working in this country, they feel like they feel like they're sharecropping because they have no path to ownership, no path. They're told they're going to own nothing and be happy. They're going to work for their entire lives and not have any chance of upward mobility. Guess what? That's what it was like when the robber barons were running things. When you had 7 roommates in your house and had 14 kids in a single bedroom house. You know, that's what we're in.
I mean, to go Marxist on you guys, you know, like alienation of labor, right? I think that's a really big aspect in Marxism is the idea that, like, you know, you eventually, like, work is important and like work has intrinsic value in who you are. No matter who you are, you can agree on that. Like, I'm a Marxist. I love working because when it's stuff that I really enjoy and I'm creating, there's nothing like it, you know? And then same thing for you, I'm sure, and for you, you know? And when you just start doing like this, like, you know, rubber stamp, you know, it's just taking you out of where you're like things you care about, your passions, and you don't have like the space to enjoy your life. And you start to become really alienated and depressed and you start going crazy, you know? And we're at this insane point now where everyone is yearning for like the 50s, you know, these Trump supporters, a lot of voters, and a lot of people, you know, like, you know, they're yearning for times gone past, right? And we're so alienated from our labor now that we're yearning from our time for like in the 50s when we were even alienated from our labor back then, dude. Like,
that's a great point.
You know, we are so like deeply cooked.
I've been telling people that they are no, that's a great point. I've been saying for a while, like, we are rats in a cage and we need to go to our little rat vending machine and do our little rat things in the cage, have our little rat activities, because if we didn't, we would fucking all lose it. And the minute one rat gets out of the cage, comes back and tries to, it's a fucking Plato's myth of the cave.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, allegory of the cave. It's the allegory of the cave. Because you can't come back and be like, hey, you guys are in chains looking at fake shit. They're like, what are you talking about? This is our reality.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you try to be like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast or like untraditional path to like make money. I'm just going to go live in the mountains, or some people do. And everybody calls you insane.
Yeah.
Like, how you get back on the wheel, do your little rat wheel thing.
Facts.
It's insane. We're so fucked, so cooked.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
unbelievably cooked.
What are we doing here? You know, it's just mind-boggling to me. You know, that this is the point we're at in society. So, you guys seen The Matrix?
Oh, dude, yeah.
You seen The Matrix? Do you know the book that The Matrix is based off of?
Those ladies made the movie off a book?
I know, the trans women, they based it off a book. You know,
is it Huxley?
No, it's this book called Simulacra and Simulation by this French bougie, like super pretentious French philosopher named Jean Baudrillard. Not French pronunciation. I'm not even gonna try. But you know, I'm butchering this horribly. But basically, the idea is that, you know, you're boiling things down to, like, you know, just a simulacra of what they are. You're taking the reality out of these images and these things. And it talks about, like, the idea of, like, a family, right? And, like, literally, like, 200 years ago, 250 years ago, like, families meant something and they meant more, you know? And I'm not saying families don't mean anything now, but you look at, like, rates of divorce, you look at things of, like, you know, like single parent households and stuff like that. And, like, the family has just been kind of, like, commodified, you know? And it's the commodification of everyday life and things like that, you know, which, in my opinion, stems from, like, you know, just the hyper individualistic, you know, reality of America. I mean, like, you know, fucking Stav, he has that great bit, you know, he's like, every other culture, you know, like, eats food and spends time with their family. Literally every other culture in the world except for white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
Yep.
They're the only people who are like, you know, actually, you gotta pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, you know? And, like, there's not bad like in relying on yourself, but you know, this rejection of like community, this rejection of reality that we're in has created like this really one-dimensional world, you know, where we just are like existing to like what, be a profit margin.
Yeah, they want to. They exist to run on the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's how the only way
bizarre.
they can be okay with running on the wheel as an existence is to make the wheel cool.
Yeah.
Or dull everything down to the wheel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, but you know,
it's fucked.
Hey, man, we got the big AJ McJustice and the Rizzler, you know, so I think it was all worth it.
If I'm Trump and I'm pressing the nuclear football, I'm calling Big Justice to boom, 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 boom. You know, just for the
5 big booms on Beijing.
boom, 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 boom.
Like, shit, Beijing is gone.
Hell of a bit.
Oh my
I'm telling you,
hell
I'm
of a
turning
bit.
this car around.
Yeah. All right.
We didn't get the bit on camera.
No.
Oh, damn.
It was a good bit.
That was really good.
Good bit. It's the grind that we play with the podcasting game.
Yeah.
No production. I don't know why it's doing that. So strange. So it doesn't like me today. It doesn't like free speech.
No.
It doesn't like how nuanced we're being, and it's like I can't put you in a box. The AI, the camera is like, you're not right or left. I don't know where to put this. I don't have a box for this. This doesn't work.
Oh, this is wrong. Yeah, I go up in my political ideology. I ascend.
The Ascension Party.
The Ascension Party. Being one of those bougie ass guys.
I mean, I want to hope and I want to be positive, but it's like, fuck.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I think things will work out eventually. You know, history is so broad and long.
I have a question. How do you wake young people, like, and how do you get back to the cave and get people out of the cave?
Yeah. Dude, that's so hard.
That's the real, like, $1 million question, right? Because that's what inspires people to get out to like, take action or, like, believe in, like, progress, you know?
Out of the cave.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, for real, dog.
Yeah.
But, like...
I mean,
have you seen that tweet or like that statistic of like Gen Z voters, and it's like ages like 18 to 22 is like plus 12 Republican, and then ages like 23 to like 26 or whatever is like plus, like it's like all Democrat, you know? Like they're like the young people.
I do think there's an issue in the divide growing between young women and men.
Oh, 100%.
I think that's problematic.
It's a major issue. Like Andrew Tate is like fucking over everything, you know? And people
I
like
think
him.
you could make the same argument for academia and ladies. You could say academia and the education system is doing the same toxification because they're teaching them that men are evil in every way, blah, 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 blah.
So this is
in the same way that Andrew Tate's being like, women are bitches, blah, blah, blah. I think there's another argument to be made on the other side of that.
This is a great point. I just watched Prof G. He's Galloway, Professor Galloway from NYU. He teaches econ, I believe. He talks a lot about this very issue of like how we're alienating young men. And now they're just like spiraling into these like very terrifying like circumstances, becoming like threats to society, right? But
changers and movers, please.
But
threats to society. That's just bad branding.
They're just
sorry. I'm paraphrasing. I know, but yeah.
Marxist people movers.
Yeah. But he talks a lot about like social media and how it's like corrupting.
Yes.
Like these youth.
That's
and
what
now
I did
that
my
you're
whole undergrad.
spending, now that these kids are spending literally like what 17 hours or some crazy statistics on like TikTok all the time, not going and talking to women. So his point is that both sides have it like wrong. Yeah. And this is a phenomenal point. Yes. And so this is why, like, and he just did it on Newsom's podcast.
Right.
They just like came out with it today.
Oh, nice.
With who?
With Galloway?
With Galloway.
Okay.
Galloway and Newsom. So this is where I think that, like, as, like, critical as you can be of Newsom, right? On bringing these voices in, like, maybe there is that realization amongst at least him and a few other, like, Democrats. They're like, we've got to temper and come back to where we can actually talk with these people. And that is 100% true.
Yeah.
You know,
The question is though, what does it mean to temper? Is it like, you know, because when I hear temper, I immediately think that that's a retreat on like trans rights.
Yeah.
That's a retreat on like, you know, gender issues, you know, and things like that. And my sister's non-binary, you know, like I have family members. I know people who are trans. Some of my best friends are trans and things like that. And I think that,
Hey, I have 2 aunts that used to be uncles.
hey man, dude, you know, live your life, you know, but like, I think that's the whole point though, is like, it's live your life. And I do agree that there's like, you know, this overcorrectness and like PC culture, you know, and like, you know, which I think is going back, you know, you saw the article from FT. It was like one banker said, you know, I can finally call people like arslers again and things like that, you know, and like that's, you know, obviously I don't support that at all, but like I think there was an overemphasis on political correctness, which like most people can look back on and be like, yeah, like it was insanely stupid, you know. I mean, and just the whole like co-opting of ideology and minorities and gender ideology, I think sent the wrong message to people where like, you know, these corporations always go back to the fucking corporations, dude.
Right,
but like literally these moneyed interests would get these things like trans rights, like gay rights and things like that. And then they would just push it. And they would push it, be like, look how inclusive we are. Look how awesome we are. And then to like, you know, fucking like Eric, who lives in like Pennsylvania and, you know, has never like met anyone who's gay because he lives in like a conservative area. He's going to see that and be like, what the fuck?
Nike's gay now? Nike's gay
like,
this month?
It's going to blow their shit off, you know? They're going to be blown away. And like that really fucked over like that movement because like at the end of the day, gay and trans people just want to be able to express themselves the way they see fit, you know. They want to fucking break out of the fucking cave, you know, of gender and like, which is really like, you know, I mean, a spectrum, you know, when you think about it in a social construct, and they just want to be themselves, you know. And that's to me the big worry about, you know, stepping back is, to me, I think any step back kind of seeds really dangerous ground to the right, especially on social issues like that would hurt more people than it would help. If like, and I think that there are ways to be effective electorally for the Democrats that don't involve stepping back on social issues.
See, I almost think they have to step back to go forward because like we got caught up in this like my reality is reality versus like I think you should be able to like live your life and be happy. That doesn't mean that like my life and living be happy has to be augmented around your living life. And so like we got the branding around the acceptance was just, I think, like you said, poorly done and executed and hurt the cause in the long run. So if it's a step back to step forward again and say, well, listen, like, whatever, you can be bigoted over there, but like that's not going to affect my happiness and who I am as a full complete person. And like
that's a valid point.
So I don't know, but it's tough because the validation is from the external, like that's the human part of the being a person. Is like I need to be accepted and feel that acceptance at an external level to help the internal acceptance of who I am. And like so it's muddy for me to even make that point.
No, I mean both, like this is what I also was like struggling with in like school. Like I was talking with Singumbe about like are there red lines where you like shut down conversation with other people in this political environment. But to this point, like I don't necessarily think you need to like well, maybe it is stepping back, but like just focusing on other things, making your platform about this right now, because you have to come back into power. Hopefully, right? Not necessarily ditching it.
No, I think that's a potential like pathway is like, you know, just talk about like economics and things that actually matter, like kitchen table issues, instead of like, you know, like this is a huge failure of the Kamala campaign was abortion, right? Yeah,
they take these, you know, very meaningful, less than 5% issues. That like it's the voting issue for the 5% of people.
Right.
But now they've made it the thing. And it's 95% of people aren't coming around to that.
Well, you know, it's like, so like Kamala, you like they had the whole abortion thing, right? And like if you're voting for me, you're voting for your sister, for your husband, for your not husband, for your you know, wife, for your aunt or whatever. And I thought that was such a manipulative tactic by the Harris campaign, because like, obviously, you know, Trump is no fan of abortion, sure. But as we saw in, like, places like Missouri, right? Missouri passed abortion protection amendment to their constitution. And then they voted like 90% for Trump. So, you know, both were possible, guys. You know? Like, and
It's a great,
and the Democrats can't even see that as a possibility reality.
no, they can't.
They don't
understand this stuff. Like Florida, for example. Florida, like literally 60% of Floridians support like a $20 minimum wage, you know? And that's like the Democrats are like, oh, we lost Florida. It's like, no, you lost Florida, you know? And
facts.
That's the whole thing is like, you know, like with the abortion thing, like the Harris campaign was like trying to just beat you over the head with, if you don't do this, you're a bad person. If you don't do Y, you're a bad person.
What was the Joe Biden strategy? If you don't vote for me, you're not black.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it's extended.
I mean, Joe Biden, in my opinion, is the root of all evil. Like, that guy was such an awful president, dude. Like,
terrible. He's all of his signatures in his entire term, except for his resignation, are auto signed.
Oh, that's sick.
Every single signature.
That's so sick, dude. Yeah, it's. I mean, not only
Deep
was
state president.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like not only was he like
out.
literally like being a puppet for like Blinken and, you know, like those people behind the scenes, but like he had some. I honestly I like some of his domestic policy, like the CHIPS Act. You know, I think he wanted to pass the PRO Act. I like the PRO Act and some of his other policies. I think I support domestically. You know, Bidenomics wasn't stupid, I don't think. You know, he was trying to build manufacturing in a smart way in this country. But he was doing it, you know, in like a divided Congress. You know, he had fucking Mnuchin. Not Mnuchin, that was Treasury Secretary. Well, damn, that's a deep pull. What's his name? Manchin.
Manchin, yeah.
From, what, West Virginia?
West Virginia, yeah. But, like, Joe Biden, I don't know if you saw, like, this reporting, but in March of last year, so, like, imagine, earlier than now last year, like, they did some internal polling, and they were like, all right, Trump would beat us right now by, like, probably 320 electoral votes, which is insane. That's like the greatest margin of history in American history. And they're like, all right, let's roll with this guy for another 6 months before we decide to get him out. And apparently Harris wanted to, like, really distance herself from Biden, right? And Joe went up to her and he was like, don't do this, kid. You know, if you do this, you're done. He said, Biden said that shit to her. Isn't that insane?
I liked that we had no clue who was in the Diddy case.
Yeah.
And then we saw anyone that came out after saying they weren't going to support Harris to the Harris events. And they're like, oh, you're in the Diddy case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean,
there were a lot of reports about, like, Dr. Jill Biden being like, you're not taking my husband out of this race.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was this built up, like, dogmatic,
fake
like,
Dr. Joe Biden.
Yeah, but, like, basically, like, he did really, like, shoot them in the foot.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about when people are like, well, the Democrats didn't even choose their candidate, right? Which is a fair argument. But at the same time, how are you going to pull that off with, 106 days left till the election?
They the ones that picked her. They didn't even, like, there's no, like...
Yeah.
No, this, like, they didn't have a convention.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. People should.
Like, there's probably an argument saying, like, logistically, they could not go any other option. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know about,
that's
like,
the
domestic
best argument against it, though.
Yeah.
You know?
But you
like, that's the logistics, which is a valid one. Yeah. Very valid one, but it's still like...
I mean, you can't build any base if you're having to pull off an entire convention with, 100 days left?
I mean, I wish it happened. It would have been vibes, you know? It would have been like a true, like, 1820s party convention where you have no fucking clue, and then you roll up, and you're like... and then you just make your argument on the spot.
That's what it should be.
Yeah,
that's way closer to democracy.
Like, our campaign season is way too long in this country. Like, it's just another way to fucking make money, dude.
But you know what's nuts, though, is that, like, Trump made it even longer. The man was literally campaigning for years.
Yeah, he started his campaign, like, right after Joe Biden got
like, honestly, if I'm one of the candidates or one of the potential
rallying, what are you gonna do? Take away his rallying?
But still, that is straight up, like, that is a different circumstance in the political system. And if you're, like, a Democrat right now who might be their choice, because there are quite a few. They're vetting now.
Yeah.
Why not start right now? Literally start your campaign now.
They already
you
have.
know, if you're top.
We've been talking about the Gavin Newsom podcast.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
yeah,
the
exactly.
campaign.
That's
You're
what I
welcome
mean.
to the campaign.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
I'm
like,
sitting
you're
down with Charlie
starting
Kirk.
those-
I should be worth at least thinking about.
President Holland going to El Salvador. Come on, guys. Like, he's starting his campaign.
Yeah.
You know?
But like also like, I don't know, maybe start pulling out pages from Trump and like getting out and riling
What
up
a
some
terrible way to
crowds.
start your campaign, just like from a political, like going to El Salvador to think that that's like, dude, no, dude, so many problems here. Like, take one block of homeless people away from a major city, and you'll get more votes than going to El Salvador. Truly,
that's
like if you want the political answer,
it's a
here,
great point.
Like,
go
cut the shit internationally and start fixing stuff here. People are paycheck to paycheck working multiple jobs, no upward mobility. If Trump eliminates taxes on 150, landslide. Whoever wants to come in next, landslide.
It's like when he did the fucking STEMI checks, everyone was like, yo.
Yeah, dude.
You know, and then he like did enough bad stuff that everyone forgot about it. But like that would have been like, I don't know, you know, it's like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like fuck, I can't. It's
like buying the vote. Like you'd be able to kind of buy the vote in a way.
I mean, I hate to say it, women's suffrage.
They already do. They already like, do buying
all the women to vote for you if you do women's suffrage.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, and they're like, you know, I mean, like gay rights. You know,
I said it back in Conor can vouch for this. Back in 2016, when no one thought he could win. I said, if he wins the Republican primary, he should come out and say that he'll legalize weed nationally, and he'll beat the Democrats in a landslide.
I do
if he
remember
does
you
that.
saying this, yeah.
Because like we're a couple incumbents. Like, why on the right can't you like have a reasonable take on abortion?
Yeah,
like if you had just a reasonable take.
Yeah,
not saying that you got to be like, you know, in the operating room ready to help the next lady get her abortion, but like have a reasonable take.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, also just thinking about who started their campaigns, AOC, Bernie.
Yeah, for
on
real.
On those tours.
You been to that speech in Denver?
I didn't.
I went to that. It was crazy, dude. There was like 34,000 people in Civic Center Park.
What's crazy about those is the number of people that go to all the things. Well, that's fun. Like that you can have a career as like a protester now.
Oh yeah.
Like you can make more money just going around to political events than you can like actually like working a job, but you get no benefits or anything, I'm sure.
It gets speaking fees.
That's how fucked up politics is. How much money is in that you can pay bodies to be in a place, and that's like a whole thing.
Oh, dude, it's awesome, man. Dude, like money makes the world go round, brother. You know?
Well, trickle some of that shit down. You got enough.
Yeah,
of
dude.
I
know. That's the greatest. If trickle down economics actually worked, then I think that like everybody would be voting Republican for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Facts.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds awesome. Like, you see the chart, and you're like, well, if you pour enough into the first cup, then it goes into the cups below. And it goes into the cup.
I gotta fill up eventually.
Yeah. And then, you know, you're like, I didn't realize that the first cup was a shot glass, and then the bottom cup is like a, 30-ounce, like, Stein.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a thing. But, hey, man. We own the libs, so it's all worth it, right?
Yeah, I guess, dude. Fuck. Dude. I can just hope that we can, I want to have a world where I can have kids and hope for a better tomorrow and not be just sad and laugh at both sides to get through the day.
Well, you should support Elon diverting, like, more transportation funding to areas that have higher fertility rates. You see that? No, that's cool. Isn't that awesome?
Wow.
He's all like, if you have more kids, you're going to get more federal funding. In like areas that have less kids.
Well, I mean, so you talk about families being broken.
Yeah.
The way to fix that now is incentives.
Yeah. I mean,
incentivize the fuck out of getting married, staying married, having kids.
I mean,
if you get married, you get here's $50,000 to start your life in America. Okay. If you get divorced within the first 5 years, you have to pay back $25,000.
That's a good one.
Okay, great. You make it to 5 years. Here's another $50,000. So now the government's giving you $100,000 to start building a life. Because if you get married, that's good for the government because it means you're paying into systems, you're becoming part of a cog in their systems. And it's good. The government should do this. It would be a good thing.
Well, this is how you know if like someone is pro-life and they're full of shit, or if they're for pro-life and they're legit, is if you walk up and they're like, you're pro-life? And they're like, yeah, like, I think abortion is a crime, the worst thing that ever happened to Earth, it's genocide. Okay. Do you support fully guaranteed maternal leave? and then they're gonna say no because they're like fiscal conservative dumbasses,
right?
You know, and then you're like, oh, you're not actually pro-life. You just like care about a baby.
No, I don't support 100% maternal leave, but paternal leave I do.
Yeah,
like 100% paternal leave. Yeah, the dads can leave the family when the kid's born. Totally, I'm in support. Got my vote.
Enforce
mandatory paternal leave in white communities. Until they match the. Well, okay. Anyway.
Yeah. No, but yeah, seriously, like, I mean, like, the whole pro-life thing is like, you don't actually care.
And that's the same thing on the left with a bunch of their arguments too, is where you don't actually care about immigration and like having people have better lives to come to this country. You don't actually give a fuck about that.
Yeah, it's like virtue signaling. Like, look how tolerant I am. I love it when brown people come to this country.
It's so much both sides virtue signaling to the shit. And that's just...
I mean, like,
we're cooked.
I think immigration is great because, like, someone's going to have to do jobs that people don't like. Yeah. You know? And, like, there's a reason that the stereotype of, like, Latin American janitors. But the thing is that, like, we, like, they should be free to pursue those opportunities. And it's super sick if they come here and then, like, their kid, like, gets a college degree or something. Maybe they don't, but still, like, it's going to be better than wherever it was, And I think it's totally fine, I mean, the issue, like, anyone will agree, is that it's just, like, deeply, deeply fucked, our immigration system. Yeah. I mean, like, Trump had...
Well, thank goodness he's going to have those gold cards for
really people to come. Thank God.
Man. It's going to be so
That'll fix it, right?
Hey, man, it's so easy. No, Trump had one good point. Just owned it there. No, he had one... It wasn't a good point, but it was like what's the word I'm looking for? Salient point.
Yes.
Where he said, we're trying to deport all these people. If we try them individually, it would take us over 200 years. So why don't we just send them all and try them in one case? Which is, like, wrong, but it makes the
other side of that is, like, okay, point. If one administration can import 10 million people. Yeah. And the next administration can't, get out 10 million people, then we're cooked. Mm-hmm. We are so beyond cooked.
I don't know.
Okay. Why would any American want that level of competition? You're against your own welfare, even on an individual or community level, to want that level of that'd be like saying, well, we should be competing with China in manufacturing. We should have slave iPhone camps in the United States to build iPhones here.
It's
People should commit suicide into nets that we build in this country, not over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you go ultimately with that shit, I think.
Yeah, that's a real, like, the virtue of, like, American capitalism is we need people killing themselves in our country. Like,
no, literally,
like, I mean, like, come on, dude, that's what we lost. We're not dogs anymore. Like, Chinese people, they're dogs. They're working their people to death, man. And that's actually, have you seen, like, Aisha Speed, that streamer? He did that tour of China. China looks fucking awesome. I'm not going to lie to you. And sure, maybe that was like a propaganda trip or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I am generally more pro-China than the average person. But I still think that, they have their excesses in terms of totalitarianism, But...
And Asians.
Hey, man.
Excess. Lots of them. They're all Asian.
There's many.
Most Asian.
For the most part.
For the most part. Yeah. Like over 1 billion, right?
I think so. But it's actually, it's supposed to go down.
Yeah, that is... So... The replacements globally are kind of fucked, right?
We're all boned.
It depends on, like, so these are also, like, arguments about what to do about China, and like one of them is also wait them out until their, like, demographics erode.
2060.
Well,
like 2080. That's an option. Yeah,
we don't think it's an option for India. Who's on the rise?
Yeah, India's chilling, dude.
It's an option for, like,
South Africa.
Think about Brazil, like Brazil, these middle powers that are, like, really rising, like Turkey too.
Iran.
Yeah. Like they're on the up, and maybe they just need to play out. Like, that's why we're also seeing arguments of, like, the world is multipolar because, like, for instance, in Ukraine, like, all these middle powers in the global south are neutral. And maybe they always have been, and polarity, like unipolarity, bipolarity has been BS because they've been constantly playing off of these large hegemons, right? No, but like, waiting them out is, like, maybe a reality. But right now, they still have, I think the estimate was 50 million 19 to 24-year-olds. That is some good cannon fodder for a war.
That's
you know,
crazy.
like, and then on top of it,
so many people.
have you guys seen one of my buddies who like really is focused on the Indo-Pacific and like insecurity?
Yeah.
He was showing me, shout out Brett, he was showing me these aircraft carriers where they build bridges extending from one to the other ship.
Dude, it's insane.
So you can traverse beachheads now on invasions.
Have you seen what they're building in Taiwan? They're like building these like get ready to hit land. Yeah.
I
nuts.
mean,
Dude, nuts.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say on Taiwan real quick. Like
Not
the fact that it's like that, what is it, 150 miles? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like right off the
It's
coast.
a lot, but it's long. Like that's a significant amount of water to traverse. Still. And water is technically like the hardest thing, right, in military strategy to like get around.
Space, but
well, okay. But I'm saying
you get some tungsten rods up there, Connor, and you don't have to really worry about water anymore.
True.
True.
You just drop the tungsten rods.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're like China and you want to get this done in Taiwan, right? Just blockade the island, right? Or what do you guys think about it? Because like, instead of invading it, just cut it off.
So there's like
Does that make
starve them
sense?
out.
Well, almost.
That's kind of brutal, dog.
But I'm not like I'm just saying like
Good Chinese strategy.
But
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
what else are you gonna do? Are you gonna risk swallowing a porcupine like Putin is with Ukraine?
Yeah, Taiwan has like been preparing for this since 1949, which is a good point. Like their one existence is to like be as awful as possible for China when China invades. But I mean, they also have 50 million people, dog. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think that, you know, you made a good point earlier, Sean, about like the Navy, you know, and like we did not learn our lesson from World War II. Like the reason we beat Japan is because Japan could make like 2 carriers a year and we could make 16.
Yeah, and right now we're getting lapped by China in ship making.
Oh, yeah.
That's real concerning.
Yeah.
Like,
but what about like modern warfare? You know,
No, I
like
do think there's something to be said for the fact that modern warfare won't be fought with people.
or even like
It's just
but,
too
like,
it's just
how
too
significant
economically
are-
inefficient.
and I'm genuinely asking, like, how significant are aircraft carriers now? When you got drones that could swarm, or you got the use of a tactical nuke to wipe your issue out of a big aircraft carrier.
I think what's more significant is like those aircraft carriers for drones that like Palmer Lucky's company is making.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is an aircraft carrier in the sky that deploys 1,000 drones.
Yeah.
And all the drones can come back to this aircraft carrier. Remember that New Jersey stuff, all the drone tech that we were like, what the hell
Was
is
that
these
what that
car
was?
size? And came out that like some of that was us.
Oh, shit.
That they were like testing that kind of tech.
Damn.
Wait, where?
Yeah, off the coast of like the eastern seaboard, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Oh, with all the
On
drones?
those this car-sized drones. It came out that like Trump released some of that was us.
Yeah.
And, like testing those, like, you know, basically like, you know, a sub, like if you deploy submarines from like air type of thing.
That's insane, dude. Like, can you imagine being like, have you seen, let's go back to Ukraine trench videos. Like, there's this one video I saw of this dude who was like hiding in the forest, and there was this Russian drone that was looking for him, and it was just like this, you know, like this high pitched whir, you know, for like going on for like 30 minutes, you know. Can you imagine you're like posted up in a trench, you know, with like someone who you become like best friends with, and then you just hear like this massive buzzing sound, and you know it's like automatic because it's the rotors, and you're like, I'm gonna die. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, they could all be like suicide drones or some shit like that, you know? They all have like grenades attached to them, and then like
can buy them off of Amazon.
Yeah,
the small ones to just go target some tanks and like.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, nuts.
The future of warfare is scary.
It is scary, you know.
And not only that too. I read a article from Carlin in Foreign Affairs.
Yeah,
and the author was talking about how like it went from great power war to like non-state actors, right? And now we've moved into a phase where it's total war of like great power and all these different actors
at the same time.
Also think like the fact that citizens have access to like drones easily.
Dude, it's so cool. We used to Joan joust when I worked at Office Max in Superior.
Dude,
like our manager, because no one ever walked into that store, no one. So we would just like attach like rulers to these drones, and then we would fly them at each other like in the main alleyway. Because literally no one would come into that store. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's so funny.
But like, yeah, they're so easily accessible. I don't know, man. We're cooked.
We're cooked. I think that's the name of the episode. We are cooked. We're cooked.
Indeed.
Corporate America.
Corporate America
is the death
cooked
of America.
And mashallah.
Have you heard of this little country called England, Connor?
Unfortunately.
They do this thing over there called knighting.
Yeah.
Here at Top Shelf Studios. After a long form conversation, I'm doing the hiding.
Okay.
Because all my life, people have been like, hey, can I get a couple inches? How's the weather up there? Do you play basketball?
Yeah.
What I've come to learn now that I've got this prefrontal lobe, I'm told, is that, I'm just waking up in a vehicle every day in this meat suit. And everyone else is in a meat suit.
Yeah.
We're going around this life and we're judging each other on these vehicles almost more than anything else.
Right.
And that seems just so silly to me.
Yeah.
So after a long form conversation, I am pleased to give you your heart height. How tall do you stand physically?
5'9".
Conor Farrell. I heart height thee 6'6".
Yo, let's go.
I hope you
dude.
will require procedure on that
That's
heart
going on the
anytime
Hinge
soon.
profile for sure, man. Yeah, I'm 5'6" now. I'm 6'6" now.
6'6",
you're
heart height at 6'6". Unintolerable.
Yeah, man. Dude, I've always wanted to be over 6 feet.
What a pleasure.
You
dude.
think I can dunk now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's go, dude. I'm going to fucking dunk on...
Dunk all over China, would you?
And MPJ. If he doesn't play well tonight. Holy shit.
Oh, let's pray.
All right.
Well, it's been a joy.
Yeah, been a pleasure,
take
sir.
some Polaroids here and get you out of here, but please come back. Let's have another. I really enjoy these intellectual conversations. I don't get enough of that. I give too much. You can see early in the episode I was riffing too much. I need to be able to hone back into intellectualism and not just joke.
No, you got to riff and ponder at the same time.
Riff and ponder. Ooh, yeah. What a great band. Come see us opening up for the Scallywags. Riff and ponder.
Indeed.
Oh man. Well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Do you want the people to find you anywhere? Do you have more posts or?
Yo, yeah, we didn't even talk about that shit.
Quick plug.
Yo, quick plug. Go subscribe to More Posts, MOOREPOSTS.com. You can find young scholars who have very unique and also, well, hopefully in the future, a bunch of like very intellectual takes that are consumable for everyone. I'm going
to put this out there in the ether to hold myself accountable to it. I promised a piece published on that website. This is going to be a backlogged episode because of the move. And during the move, when I'm setting up the new studio, I will finish and edit that piece on Disney World. And put out that it's kind of a Gonzo-esque take on my Disney World experience. So.
Good. And Connor's also promised. So if you want to hear some unique young academics who, or just anyone who's like very passionate about something and wants to say something, go subscribe there. It also allows you to go support like a nonprofit. So it ties it to like, you're not just hopefully learning, but like, you also now have means to like go do something.
Yeah, and my nonprofit money is going right to the CIA. So.
Oh yeah,
great.
I want new leadership in Turkey next year. So
mine's going to the Friends of the IDF.
Fuck those dudes.
I know, fuck them.
They've got friends.
They got friends
in low places, I assume.
Mostly hell. Yeah.
What you got, Conor?
You can follow me on Instagram at Conor PHARRELL. Go to the link in my bio. It's a GoFundMe. Donate to my friends. GoFundMe in Gaza. Raising money. Keep them fed. Keep them alive. So
try to link that in the description here.
Cheers.
Because that matters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you, sir. That's all I got.
Like and subscribe. Go support these gentlemen. I'm going to have them back soon.
Inshallah.
Fuck off and be well.